If these signals are appearing in your life, they point to one undeniable fact. You are already navigating the road to riches. Not merely the riches accounted for in banks, but the riches conceived in the consciousness, where all true fortune originates. Know this: every substantial empire, every significant achievement, every enduring legacy left by a principle-centered man started as a hidden blueprint, etched not on paper, but in the definite chief aim of the subconscious. If you are witnessing these signals, it means that blueprint is now activating. The first signal you are on the road to riches is a deepening intolerance for average. You sense it with new intensity. Where you once acquiesced to the scripts of a commonplace existence, they now grate against your spirit. What once seemed tolerable, exchanging hours without vision, expending resources without strategy, indulging in empty entertainment, now feels like a form of suffocation. This is not annoyance. This is awakening. Your mentality is ejecting what contradicts your emerging destiny. It is purging the routines, the associations, the thought patterns that maintained your scarcity, not just materially, but in purpose, in creativity, in influence. Riches commence when you declare, "This costume no longer fits the man I am." That is the first critical pivot. You are no longer dazzled by facades. You are no longer amused by trivial chatter. You crave mastery. You crave impact. You crave autonomy. Not through chance, but through persistence of will. This craving is a beacon. You have passed a frontier. You are beginning to move with the bearing of a man who has crystallized his aim. And when a man's aim becomes definite, cosmic law bends to assist him. Another signal is your zero tolerance for misspent energy. Energy, you now grasp, is the literal capital of the powerful. The broke exhaust it, the common exchange it for fleeting comfort, but the wise allocate it. Every unit of focus becomes a beam in the architecture of your coming kingdom. You no longer exist for the escape of Friday. You live for your mastermind alliance with a future self. You have learned that 60 minutes spent creating compounds beyond decades spent desiring. And because you've internalized this law, you guard your energy like a sovereign guards his borders. You decline more frequently now, not from conceit, but from congruence. For every no to irrelevance is a yes to your definite chief aim. You've developed a reaction to gossip, to aimless digital grazing, to thoughtless consumption. You are no longer accessible to those who deplete your essence and blunt your focus. You understand that vitality is holy and concentration is fortune. The man who commands his attention will forever command his circumstances, and you have started to govern yours. That is another signal. Where others are impulsive, you are deliberate. Where others ingest, you produce. Where others plead, you command. Because you are no longer diffuse, you are concentrated. And concentration is the forge that melts the links of limitation. When a man is concentrated, he cannot be swayed by public opinion. He cannot be derailed by the fear of criticism. He advances with trajectory. And the man with trajectory is always richer than the man with turmoil, irrespective of his current ledger. You have also initiated thinking in decades, and that's another signal. You no longer operate on emotional whims. You have begun to engineer processes. You have begun to plan in seasons, not spurts. You don't merely pursue revenue. You engineer ecosystems. You are constructing holdings, holdings of integrity, holdings of expertise, holdings of worth. You have become the kind of man who inquires, how will this yield a return in 10 years, rather than, how does this please me in this moment? That pivot, subtle as it appears, is the bedrock of dynasties. You perceive currency through a new lens. That's an indicator of evolution. Where you once were intimidated by money, now you comprehend it. You see money as a diligent employee, not a tyrannical boss. You see money as a magnifier, not a miracle. And most critically, you now recognize money as the echo of value provided, not just labor expended. You ceased bartering your minutes for cents and began amplifying your worth through leverage, through intellectual property, through automated processes. That is the consciousness of true affluence. Affluence is not a digit, it is an operating system. And your operating system is no longer programmed for lack. Lacking minds accuse, explain, and hesitate. Affluent minds construct, resolve, and initiate. You halt blaming your beginnings. You halt awaiting an invitation. You halt seeking validation from external sources. You are now the source. You are now the one who acts while others prepare. You are now the one who announces, "It originates within me." That is authority, and authority is the precursor to overflow. Another signal you are on the road to riches is you are now fixated on refinement. You are consuming more wisdom, integrating more knowledge, posing more penetrating questions, tuning into dialogues that expand your framework. You are replacing small talk with strategic counsel. You are replacing grievances with covenants. You are replacing abstraction with applied action. And that action, even when flawed, is generating thrust. Thrust is the paramount asset of the man on the ascent. Not haste, thrust. For haste exhausts, but thrust accumulates. Every disciplined morning you consecrate, every prioritized block you honor, every difficult decision you uphold adds mass to your essence, and mass generates magnetism. People detect it. Providence detects it. And when reality senses your solemn intent, it rearranges itself accordingly. You are becoming solemn now. Not solemn in demeanor, but in duty. You may smile more, not because the path is smoother, but because you are congruent. You no longer spiral when plans fracture. You cease manufacturing alibis. You don't discuss objectives casually. You move like someone who anticipates a favorable outcome. You carry yourself as a man who has already toured the estate in his imagination. You see, every affluent man I've ever dissected shared one common thread. They persisted in advance of the evidence. They didn't await the trophy to behave as if they deserved it. They operated as if the resources were already en route. They architected as if the vision were already tangible. And now, you emulate this. You mentally rehearse at dawn. You speak dominion over your domain. You filter your speech because you know syllables shape worlds. Your lexicon is transforming. That's a potent signal. You no longer utter, "I wish," "perhaps," or "if only." You declare, "I am," "I shall," "it is ordained." You have deleted hesitation from your dictionary. You have stopped recycling narratives of defeat. You have transformed your voice into an instrument of declaration. You are now narrating your forthcoming reality with exactitude. And when a man dictates his language, he dictates his lived experience. Your cohort is shifting too. Another signal? You are transcending petty dialogues. You are departing from communities built on complacency. Not from superiority, but because you are assembling something of magnitude. And the vaster your vision, the more selective your inner circle must become. You comprehend that adjacency is influence, and lack is communicable. Therefore, you have started to position yourself in environments where exceptionality is the minimum standard. You've learned you needn't be the most knowledgeable man present. You simply need to be present where knowledgeable men converse. You have become a disciple of affluence, not merely of cash flow, but of law, of vibrational frequency, of heritage.
You are no longer simply searching for a method to earn. You are constructing a doctrine, a framework, a creed. And that creed is propelling you forward. Another signal, you are walking the path. Opposition no longer shatters you, it forges you. Where once you retreated under fire, now you advance. You understand every barrier is a drill. You have ceased despising failure and commenced mining it for data. You don't evade discomfort, you transmute it. You extract the lesson. You convert it into propulsion. And because of this, you navigate ordeals with poise. That is the hallmark of one being conditioned for substantial fortune. Because fortune demands a resilient vessel, and that vessel is forged in the fires of tested persistence. If you are seeing these signals, it means your vessel is being tempered. You are becoming answerable for your promises. You are completing your initiated cycles. You are appearing even when the emotion has evaporated. You are becoming the kind of man who can be entrusted with increase. And trust always precedes transfer. That is immutable law. When you prove trustworthy, fortune seeks you, because fortune is intelligent energy, and energy flows into organized channels. When you construct channels through ritual, clarity, contribution, and steadfastness, the current of abundance begins to circulate. Not because you tricked the universe, but because you became congruent with its principles. You have become the channel now. You are no longer speculating. You are implementing. You are no longer wishing. You are fabricating. And that, my friend, is the most transparent signal of all. You are on the road to riches. There is an inflection point in every man's pilgrimage when he starts to sense the internal recalibration, not because of his possessions, but because of his essence. The recalibration is silent. It does not arrive with fanfare or ceremony. It arrives as new non-negotiables. It manifests when you begin demanding more of yourself, especially in isolation. It unveils itself when you start doing what the majority reject because you comprehend your future self requires it. If you're witnessing these signals, you're no longer pursuing currency. You are evolving into the kind of man currency pursues. And let me reaffirm, the man of authentic wealth never leads with his portfolio. He leads with substance. He leads with lucidity. He leads with mission, because he knows wealth is not chased. It is invoked. You invoke wealth by becoming indispensable, by becoming dependable, by becoming masterful. Each time you augment your usefulness, your capacity for fortune expands exponentially. The planet is populated with those who desire to be comfortable, but its architecture is raised by those who are consequential. Audit your rituals now. If you're witnessing these signals, it means your rituals have started to synchronize with perpetual gain rather than instant relief. You no longer consume merely for taste. You fuel for performance. You no longer sleep to hide. You recuperate to rebuild. You no longer browse to kill time. You study to evolve.
These are not minor adjustments. These are indicators that your self-concept is morphing, and self-concept is the generator of fortune. When you alter your self-perception, you alter what you permit. A man of lack rationalizes corrupting habits. A man of abundance engineers his environment around discipline. Discipline is not deprivation, it is distinction. Discipline shields your energy, it shields your state, it shields your concentration. Without it, nothing of magnitude endures. With it, all thresholds become crossable. If your dawns are becoming more designed, your surroundings more curated, your schedule more purposeful, it is not coincidence. It is the conduct of a man preparing for stewardship, not subsistence. You see, you cannot sustain fortune if you still reason like a man barely surviving. You must begin to reason like a man with a lineage awaiting his contribution. The man of lineage does not waste hours in petty debate. He does not pursue hollow accolades. He does not calibrate his worth by the volume of applause. He is anchored in principle. He understands that real wealth is not a function of his intake. It is a function of his output, his retention, and his capacity to endow the next generation with a foundation, not a blank slate. Another signal you're on the path. Your relationship with exertion has evolved. You've stopped requesting simple. You've stopped hunting for loopholes. You've stopped worshiping passive income without first attaining active mastery. You comprehend that leverage only magnifies pre-existing value. You now regard intense work as a sacred geometry, not a curse to avoid, but a craft to hone. You no longer perceive your exertion as a tax. You see it as an initiation, because every repetition, every concentrated project, every cycle of deliberate practice compounds into authority. And authority is the ultimate currency. Wealthy men are authorities in a domain, not in all domains, but in one. They dedicate, they distill, they deepen, and in that depth they discover sovereignty. You are no longer seduced by fads. You're not hopping between half-formed impulses. You've selected your craft, you've claimed your cause, and now you're tunneling down, constructing foundations. Because superficial effort yields superficial rewards, but depth establishes domain. Another signal you're walking the path. You've learned to govern your internal climate. Where you once erupted, now you evaluate. Where you once trembled, now you breathe. Where you once absorbed all criticism, now you analyze it. You understand that command over emotion is not softness. It is a strategic advantage. It enables you to maneuver tactically when others are hijacked by impulse. It enables you to choose based on creed, not crowd. And that divergence, that interior fortitude, is what forges a man who can guide, a man who can construct, a man who can multiply. And multiplication is the master key, not merely of money, but of being. When you commence thinking in terms of multiplying your influence, your insight, your vision, your reach, your mentality has entered the dimension of affluence. Because affluent minds don't just transact, they multiply. Poor minds only deplete. They crave the next rush, the next distraction, the next chemical spike. Affluent minds postpone gratification in service of multiplication. That's why you're acquiring skill instead of squandering attention. That's why you're engineering frameworks instead of numbing anxiety. That's why you're investing your vitality instead of leaking it. You're starting to see that every motion you make is either an investment or an expense. Every ritual either compounds for your future or against it. And because you've perceived this truth, you are beginning to choose from your future self's perspective, not your present self's feelings. This is the transition the multitude never make. When the moment your definite chief aim drowns out your doubt, when your why overpowers your weakness, when you elect based on legacy, not leisure, that's not mere development. That's preparation for overflow. You are preparing now, not just with targets, but with architecture. You've begun to log your inputs. You gauge your vitality. You audit your attention. You track your outflow. You track your conduct, not from compulsion, but from command. And command is the bedrock of true liberty. The man who cannot command himself can never command riches, because fortune will always flee a psyche of chaos. But fortune is magnetized to order, to stewardship, to purposeful design. Another signal you're on the path. Your internal dialogue has become fortified. You no longer flagellate yourself for every misstep. You adapt, you recalibrate, you speak destiny. You declare reality. You understand you must command the man in the mirror before you can command any external endeavor. And that command commences at sunrise. Every dawn you elect which voice to obey. And now you are electing the voice of your mastermind alliance with your highest self. You are constructing yourself with syntax that empowers. That is not delusion. That is design. You no longer require external pep. You've transcended inspiration without implementation. You're no longer dazzled by glittering images with no groundwork. You respect relentless execution. You admire grounded confidence. You seek applied philosophy. You would rather be quiet and consequential than noisy and negligible. And that internal migration, that density of essence, is a lodestone for permanent fortune.
Let's discuss the intangible. If you're witnessing these signals, you've likely grown more attuned to frequency. You can sense when something is discordant. You can discern when a person's essence contradicts their speech. You can intuit when an opportunity is misaligned, even if it appears lucrative. That sensitivity is not frailty, it is applied faith. It means your inner guidance is being fine-tuned. And the affluent man always consults this inner counsel, not from sentiment, but from cultivated awareness. You are aware now, not anxious, but acutely aware of your selections, your cycles, your unseen vulnerabilities. And that awareness grants you the power to correct course before the cost is catastrophic. That's what distinguishes the man who preserves what he builds from the man who watches it erode. It's not IQ, it's emotional intelligence. It's the humility to evolve, to pose superior questions, to upgrade when others succumb to pride. If you are witnessing this humility within yourself, you are on hallowed ground, because the road to riches is consecrated. It is not for the masses, it is not for the committee, it is for the consecrated. The man who remains when it's arduous, the man who commits when others contemplate, the man who forfeits short-term approval for generational abundance. That is you now. You don't merely desire more, you are being more. Your external reality may not yet mirror it completely. You may still be in the foothills. You may still be ascending. But internally, you already know you are fundamentally different. Your mind is more incisive. Your intentions are more crystalline. Your actions are more decisive. You're no longer the prior version. And you are never reverting. That is wealth. Not having, being. And every signal you're witnessing now is corroboration. You are becoming the kind of man who can steward fortune, direct fortune, multiply fortune, and bequeath fortune not merely of wealth, but of wisdom. And that, my friend, is beyond valuation. If you're still seeing the signals, and, more critically, if you're still embodying them, then let me affirm what few will voice openly. Riches are no longer a probability for you. They are a mathematical certainty. Why? Because you've already transformed into the very archetype fortune was engineered to amplify. You no longer need to scavenge for provision like a hopeful skeptic. You've earned the right to anticipate prosperity not through arrogance, but through harmonic alignment. Your thoughts, your decisions, your actions, and your standards now resonate with abundance at the quantum level. Observe how you now treat your mornings, not as a frantic scramble, but as consecrated territory. You arise with resolve, not reactivity. You strategize, not succumb. You direct your day instead of being directed by it. And every day launched in purposeful alignment is a stock certificate in your future empire. Compound that alignment over quarters, years, and lifetimes, and no earthly force can intercept what is destined for you. Fortune is not for the fragmented. It streams to the designed. And you, my friend, have become a man of designed destiny. Even your targets have transformed. Where once you pursued notoriety, now you pursue nourishment. Where once you wanted money to prove your worth, now you know worth is the quiet certainty that you are building something that outlives you. You've discovered that authentic power isn't about acquiring more options, It's about being so aligned that the right options are drawn to you. And from that posture, you've entered the realm of sovereignty. For the man who is needless is the most formidable man walking. He cannot be negotiated with by his 6 basic fears. He cannot be sidetracked. He cannot be bribed with empty promises, and because of this, fortune now seeks him organically. You've learned the most affluent are not accumulators, but architects. You've adopted the mindset of legacy architecture. You don't ask, what can I extract? You ask, what can I construct that endures? This chasm separates the affluent from the aspirational. Aspirational people fantasize. Affluent people fabricate. They understand money pursues value, and value emanates from a disciplined mind and a honed craft. You are honing now. Every day you think with more layers. Every day you resolve with more grace. Every day you communicate with more authority. That is the fingerprint of a man preparing for scale. Let's not overlook the internal metamorphosis that precedes every financial revelation. Identity. If your identity has shifted, your reality has already begun its lagging adjustment. You no longer say, I'm attempting. You say, I am in the process of manifestation. You don't say, someday. You say, the timeline is already set. I am synchronizing with it. You move as if it's completed. You labor as if it's completed. You design as if it's completed. And that interior shift is what the field of reality echoes back. Vibration is infallible. When your mind is decided, circumstances reorganize to reflect it. Even in stillness you are constructing. You no longer require constant applause to validate your direction. You've cultivated the practice of appearing even when the stage is empty. You've severed the addiction to external validation. You've become your own supreme court. And that self-respect, that integrity, that is the core substance of wealthy men.
Fortune without core substance is a brief spectacle, but fortune constructed upon identity, intentionality, and internal power, that category of fortune transcends epochs. Let me tell you this, it is no longer a question of if, it is a function of when. The man you are becoming is an unavoidable event, because you no longer decide from your present constraints. You decide from your future endowment. You don't ask, what can my current resources handle? You ask, what does the man I am crystallizing into choose? You've stopped allocating funds to your anxieties. You've started deploying capital toward your definite chief aim. You've made every dollar a dedicated employee, every task a declarative statement, every interaction a strategic deposit. And because of this, fortune has no viable alternative but to enter your field. You now speak with completed thoughts. You communicate with embodied conviction. You own your chronology. You protect your aura. You move with cadence, not chaos. You think in steps ahead. You inquire with depth. You no longer wait for society to assign you a rank. You instate your own rank. And when a man knows his rank, the world negotiates accordingly. You don't petition for significance. You operate from it. You've made a treaty with solitude. Where once you dreaded being alone, now you cultivate it. Because solitude has become your laboratory, your proving ground, your strategic command center, your sanctuary of refinement. The man who can sit in pure silence and build in the unseen is the man who can manage abundance in the spotlight. Most fear silence because it mirrors their emptiness. But you faced the mirror, and you began building in the reflection. And that construction is invaluable. You've stopped subcontracting your discipline. You've stopped making others liable for your rituals. You no longer need a notification to do what you pledge to yourself.
You honor your word in the unseen, and when your private conduct is congruent with your public proclamation, that is authentic fortune. Because true fortune is coherence. No divided loyalties, no conflicting standards, one integrated being, one mission, one sovereign. You've developed foresight, not the kind framed on a wall, but the kind encoded in your nervous system. You see your future before it materializes. You speak vitality into barren spaces. You build when there are no witnesses. You plant orchards when others are cursing the soil. And because of this, you will harvest what others only browse in catalogs, not by accident, not by birthright, but by cosmic law. The law of sowing and reaping, the law of belief, the law of assumed responsibility, the law of mental dominion. If you are authentically walking this road, there is one final signal that is irrefutable. You've become immovable. You are no longer unsettled by divine delays. You are no longer disheartened by closed doors. You are no longer fractured by setbacks. Why? Because you've trained your mentality to interpret all friction as fortification. You've mastered the art of harvesting dividends from adversity. You are an alchemist now. You convert resistance into resources, loss into leverage, delay into divine timing. You've made excellence your baseline, not an occasional act, but your permanent state, even in the shadows. You've made integrity your non-negotiable. You've made your purpose your medium of exchange. You no longer chat about goals. You discuss architectures, because architectures produce. Goals are mere destinations, but architectures are the vehicle. And you, my friend, are engineering that vehicle every single sun cycle. You're no longer chasing explosive victories. You're accumulating silent victories, because you now know the compound interest of daily fidelity will outperform every overnight sensation. You're not building for the next milestone. You're building for your bloodline. You're not here to amuse. You're here to anchor. And that paradigm, that infinite game posture, is what renders fortune inevitable. So I will declare it again. If you're witnessing these signals, you're not off course. You're not behind schedule. You're not disoriented. You're being tempered. And everything you are becoming now, the rituals, the posture, the lucidity, the conviction, these are not random events. These are affirmations. Affirmations that you are operating in harmony with the man you were architected to become. That man is already resident within you. He's the one who greets the dawn, who integrates wisdom instead of broadcasting complaints, who executes instead of deliberates, who speaks principle, embodies truth, constructs legacy. He doesn't merely display success, he is its embodiment. And every day, that man is expanding, stronger, sharper, more audacious, more liberated. You don't owe the crowd a justification. You don't owe anyone evidence. You owe yourself relentless follow-through. You owe yourself unwavering consistency. You owe your future lineage the version of you who refused to abandon the forge when the heat intensified. You owe your calling a man who answered its summons without negotiation. So stand erect, walk with gravitational pull, continue your construction. The world may overlook you today, but fortune's radar has already locked onto your coordinates, because the man you are now, disciplined, aligned, lucid, and in a state of perpetual becoming, is the exact prototype fortune has been scanning for since the beginning of time.